Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ray Tampa Podcast. Our podcast offers bold commentary on various subject matters by maintaining a laser-like focus on the truth. My name is Ray Tampa, and I'm the host of the Ray Tampa Podcast. We have in our studio two talented and intelligent gentlemen, Mr. Russell Cato and Mr. Jamie Wilson III, my co-host. Also, we're honored and pleased to have as our guest, Mr. Michael Hawkins, recently retired law enforcement officer of 42 years. When I say one of the best, I mean one of the best, Officer Michael Hawkins. Officer Hawkins is here to talk with us, to discuss with us this recently passed law that allows people to carry guns without a permit, permitless carry law, and any other perspectives he would like to offer. What I'm going to do is read an article that I wrote. And after reading the article, we're going to engage in a very highly and intense discussion about the article, with Officer Hawkins contributing a lot to the discussion. The title, Permitless Carry Law, a Real Menace to Society. The article. Time and time again, we've heard of cases where unarmed African Americans have been shot and killed by police officers who claimed, quote, "I was in fear for my life. I thought he/she had a gun," end of quote. People have been killed because they had a cell phone in their hands, a wallet in their hands, a remote control in their hands, a cigarette lighter, or nothing at all. But officers have alleged that the deceased might have been reaching for something. During my research, I discovered a truly comprehensive listing of unarmed African Americans killed in the United States by law enforcement officers over the course of many years. The list is long. The article is published by Wikipedia and is listed, or titled, that is, "The List of Unarmed African Americans Killed by Law Enforcement Officers." To drive home my point, I want to identify about 5 entries from that report. Number 1, on September 20th, 1999, in Miami, Florida, 19-year-old Antonio Butler was shot and killed by Officer Warren Mendez. The officer stated he believed Butler was reaching for a gun, but he was unarmed. The officer, Mendez, that is, was involved in 6 previous shootings, killing 3 other people. Number 2, May 9th, 2012, Jacksonville, Florida. 36-year-old Davinian Williams was shot and killed during a traffic stop. Officer Jeff Edwards said he thought Williams was reaching for a gun, but no weapon was found. The officer was fired. January 23rd, 2018, Bradenton, Florida. 38-year-old Corey Mobley was shot and killed by an officer responding to a domestic incident. The officer claimed he had a gun, but he didn't. Number 4, September 5, 2018, Hollywood, Florida. 23-year-old James Leatherwood was shot and killed by a SWAT officer. attempting to serve an arrest warrant. The officer said he reached for his waistband. No weapon was found in the apartment. And on March 8th, 2020, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 27-year-old Barry Geddes was chased by police in connection with a possible sexual battery. An officer shot Geddes, who was unarmed. The state of Florida, with its racist, pathetic, power-hungry, and thuggish governor, just upped the ante and made it even easier, I believe, for the killings to continue and without consequences for the most part. Governor DeSantis signed into law a bill allowing residents to carry concealed weapons without the need for permits or minimal training on the use of the weapons or the knowledge of the legally allowed places you can carry the weapons concealed. More guns being carried by more people will undoubtedly result in more deaths. Couple this with the doctrine of qualified immunity, which shields police officers of legal liability generally when they are involved in shootings. And the danger zone is more evident for African Americans. Another point I would like to make, a rather sobering point at that. Slightly more than 98% of the killings by police officers did not result in criminal charges from 2013 to 2022. 98% plus of the killings did not result in any charges. And this data is a result of a report by the highly regarded organization Mapping Police Violence. No accountability. For African Americans in Florida, we feel it is imperative that the information discussed in today's podcast be taken to heart. To help us in this discussion, we have one of the most respected law enforcement figures in the world. Again, in the world. Sergeant Michael Hawkins, recently retired after 42 years of service, will offer knowledge and perspective throughout our time together today. Black people, this matter of people being allowed to carry guns without permits could be a huge trap. Be careful. The statement, quote, "I thought he had a gun and I was in fear for my life," easily transitions to, quote, "He had a gun and I was in fear for my life," end of quote. I believe that not all laws passed for the benefit of African Americans, rather some may serve, I want to read that sentence again. I believe that not all laws passed are for the benefit of African Americans. Rather, some may serve to target African Americans, especially if a known racist governor and a group of pathetic lapdog legislators are involved. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very true.
So at this point, we're going to engage in a very lively discussion. But before we do so, we're going to ask Sergeant Michael Hawkins to first explain to us the new law, the permitless carry law.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ray, to Jamie, and to Russell. It's glad to be here to be sharing with you.
Glad to have
The new law that was signed in April by Governor DeSantis says that with this, and some people say it's open carrying law, but it's not open carrier. It's allow individuals to be able to carry weapons on them concealed, and they do not have to have a permit. The problem we have with that is that you got to be very careful on that, because next thing you know, you have the Wild Wild West, and we don't want that. Several things came up out of that law. They said you had to be 21 and above to be able to get to be able to do that. Second of all, you cannot have any what they call disqualifying felony charges, anything with violence. And it also says misdemeanor, domestic violence, or injunction. With those rules, then you're allowed to carry. Now, in certain states, they have the good old boy system. That's where the shotgun is in the window and all like that. That is not what the law is saying. We have to make sure that if you're carrying it, you have to make sure that you have an ID with you. That's one of the things of the law. If law enforcement asks you and you have it and do not have identification, then that's a problem. But if you have your identification, it's not. I tell people all the time, sometimes you don't have to fight that fight right then. Take the information, take that person's name, and then we can deal with it later. And sometimes we are in a different mode now, generation that won't do anything but let me come at it, but that's not what it is. So that's one of the things you look at. Now, also, that new law will not allow you to take firearms on school properties. You can't take it in bars, government buildings, anything like that. And one of the things I did notice is that places like Tropicana Field, you can't take it in there. You can't take it in probably some of the Amityville theaters, some of the other places. Mahaffey Theater, if you go in there, I went there for a comedy show. They stop you right there and have the metal detector to check and see. So it does not give you a privilege to come in. We just celebrate the graduations back in May, and we did have certain individuals who felt that even if they had a carry and conceal permit, they should be allowed to come in. No, that didn't work. You don't come in there. So we have to understand it's just certain criteria you have to meet. Also in your vehicle, it can't just be laying out. It need to be concealed. So a lot of times we see it open carrying because sometime many years ago, certain states had the open carry where you had the guns on your hip. While you walk around, you can see that I'm in the Wild Wild West. That's not what it is. It has to be concealed. If it's not concealed, then that's a problem. Then you're going to go into what law enforcement is going to take action. But law enforcement do have the right to ask you for your identification if you're carrying a firearm, if you don't have a permit.
All great information. All great information. And as I stated, we hope people will pay attention to what's being discussed in this particular podcast. Mike, even though you gave us a bit of information there, what about training? Are people required to have any training at all to use that weapon?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. With carrying a concealed firearm permit, it's certain trainings you have to have, and then you have to wait. Well, they fill out the paperwork and it takes 90 days. With this, there's no training. Nobody. One of the things I deal with, and I used to speak to the youth, this does not concern you because you as a youth under the age of 21, that's not for you to go out.
Right.
We're seeing a large number of our young African-American males that are leaving here fast. And when that happened, it's all because of gun violence. And because of that, we need them to understand you don't go around and tow. I think that the saddest part we had an incident a few years ago was a 13-year-old running around here with a 9mm with an extended clip. What a 13-year-old do with that? So the laws is going to be in place for juveniles and young adults under the age of 21. If you're carrying a firearm, you're going to get in trouble with it. Regardless, you got your ID or not, you're not going to get a permit, but you cannot carry it.
Excellent information. Either of you?
Wow.
Well, if not at this time, I want to ask you to, all right, let's take a look at what I read in the sense of previous situations where people have been killed without guns. and officers have alleged that they may have been reaching for a gun or he thought he had a gun. Mike, have you ever witnessed a situation where one of your colleagues discharged his firearm and hurt someone?
No, I have never been on a scene to see that. I have come up to scenes after the fact. And I think if you get people respect you, they're going to ask you questions. You be fair with them. I know one major incident where some officers got killed. There were shots at this residence, and I was off from work that day, but I got called back in, talking to the family members of the man that was killed. They trusted me to talk to me and get me information. I have never been there. I got there after the fact when they were doing all the shooting. But I was able to get there right afterwards to talk to the officers and talk to the family members of the young man who was in the house where they got killed. He had killed 2 officers. He got killed, but the family felt enough to come talk to me, and their heart went out to everybody. And that was one of the things that I'm close with the family still. It doesn't have anything to do, and I want you to listen to stop putting all law enforcement together as the same people.
Right. And I'm glad you said that because that's what I was about to say.
We can't.
That's why we have you, because you don't fit by no stretch.
You know why? Because I give an account to God first.
Right.
But not all law enforcement. There's a small percentage that we always had problems with, but a great number of them give their best. I said something a couple of weeks ago when I was here. I think about Grace Aubrey starting this a room where she put clothes and stuff at Gibbs for underprivileged kids. Well, you don't see that because most of us, she's making sure they got clothes because we in society, churches and all, are bypassing some of our children who are living in sicker situations where they're not getting any, they don't, some reason, something ain't working in the house. The dynamics of the house is bad. So she's making sure they have the clothing, they have different things, toiletries and different things that she's one of the many that's doing stuff. We got different officers doing other programs out there. And then we have where just recently, African-American male just got a scholarship from St. Pete Police Department, high grade for them. So there are those that are doing it, but then there are those who look at TV too much and think that's what it is. I have a problem with situations is, I mean, we have a split second, but what is being done for you to think that in that split second that you can say, oh, I thought he had a gun, because you don't see it.
Right. If it's daytime, like you said, during the day.
But you know, I think what is happening here, and I could be just as wrong as hell. You have to look at the American culture in dealing with guns. We need to go back and look at and really study the Second Amendment to the Constitution.
Yes.
How is this thing being interpreted, Ray? That's a problem. Because if you look at statistics, the United States is the highest violent gun rate in the country for developing countries.
In the world.
In the world.
Yes. Yes.
We sell more guns. Now, I have to go back and look at that. And I say to you and the rest of it, what is the economic impact of guns in this country? Who makes the profit here? Gun manufacturers. Gun manufacturers. We have to be concerned. Listen, the point to make, and I think about this, when a bullet is released from a gun, the thinking is that a solution is going to be solved. Yeah. That's the solution. That's the thinking of people. So if I got a gun, I can solve my problem by taking a life. It's over. I don't have to worry about that problem no more. We are in a country that is sick. We are a sick country when it comes to guns. If you look at the administration, federal and state, no one want to attack the gun issue. Look at it. No one want to really fight this issue of guns.
They have a lot of money.
That's right.
No
one want to deal with this.
Well, but that's why we need.
Wait. Please give me a second.
Okay.
Russ, you said you want to look at the administration.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take issue with that because the Biden administration is trying to attack the issue of guns. It's the Republican administrations that are fighting it. Look
But-
at Congress. I'm
Truly.
going to say that. Look at
Truly.
Congress.
Truly.
You got the Republican
Truly.
congressman who won't do a thing
Truly.
about all these gun
Sure.
deaths, all these mass shootings. They won't do a thing. But the Democrats are begging them to let's work on this problem.
But-
So I took issue with
But
the
here's what
administration.
I'm saying, Ray,
Right.
and I go back to the administration on this.
Okay.
Because if you don't get both part of the administration to deal with it, it's going to be a crisis. Yeah, the Republicans, it's not going to deal with it. You know, they're going to push guns through the Second Amendment. Look at it.
Mhm.
Democrats is trying to fight that. How y'all guys going to come together as one group, as a Congress, to fight this? So I blame
That's-
it on the administration.
That's the big question.
It-
How is it going to happen?
Yeah, I blame
And
it
I
on the
think-
administration.
I think when you look at that also, the problem we have is that people vote people in office
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
that should not be in office. And the
Yes.
reason why I say that is because I don't want the NRA or anybody else to dictate to me when I see, I've dealt with youth in the schools
Yeah.
for many, many years, and I see casualties of great number.
Mhm.
And we look back and say, oh, we sorry, that's bad, that's sorry. And after a couple of days, we back to doing the same old
Yeah.
thing with nothing being done.
Right.
I go back to 1988 and Russell, you was in the county, Ray
Yeah.
used to, when
Yeah.
when at Permitless Park High School,
I
when
was- That guy got
guy
killed.
got killed.
Killed.
Got his name. I know I had it before I came in, but as you get older, you forget the
In
name.
fact, the
He
guy,
gets
yeah,
yeah, the two together.
he's out.
They went and got the guns, came in. One of the gentlemen who assisted in taking them down, who just passed within the year, was Glenn Bailey. He was assistant principal. So we see this, the gun situation is out there. There are problems, but we ought to make sure we got to teach, particularly young folks. And I hate to say young folks, but young people, that we have to be so careful that we cannot resolve things with guns.
Right.
And to make sure if you confront it by law enforcement. Recently in Lakeland, the young man was 12 years old, shooting at police like he'd been taking target practice. Did y'all see?
Mm-mm.
Not aware of that one.
Yes, not 12 years, he was shooting at officers. And that was sad. That was all on the news for about 3 or 4 days. And that's the way he turned around and put his hands together and was shooting at officers coming around the corner. That young man could have been dead.
Mhm.
I think he wound up getting a wound in the foot or something like that, a leg. They didn't kill him. But you got to be so careful because people is going to react and shoot back. So that law opens the door up for people who think I've got the right to kill, to go into what we call stand your ground. And you got to be very careful about that. So yes, I think I have a problem with, like you said, I'm gonna go back to what Richard said. When you say, I thought he had, thought is a big word. I like to be sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm gonna be sure and safe. Now that's the difference. I'm gonna be sure and safe.
Mhm.
Then think I thought. And then there's one there. You look at it and you're saying, oh, I thought. Then you're standing there. And we need to make sure the small percentage. I'll go back. If that small percentage is not doing what they're supposed to do,
Mhm.
then we need to work on that and hold the leaders accountable
Yes.
for that.
Mhm. So I have a question. We're talking about the overzealous, some of the overzealous cops, small percentage, as you say. So in training, when, I know it's been a long time since you've been at the academy, but in training, a lot of people I talk to say a lot of the perps that they use in scenarios are people of color. You think they have any effect on when they come to the South Side, the cops coming to the South Side that's not pretty much from our area, with their eagerness to pull the gun or whatever? You think they have any effect on?
No, it has nothing, because if
Yeah.
you look at the statistics, when the last time a police officer shot somebody on the South Side? But we've had numerous shootings and people get killed on the North Side.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't realize that.
Mhm.
And some of them because of domestic violence and some of the situations like that. You can go back, the numbers are there.
Mhm.
The silhouettes and stuff that you use because you do different training.
Mhm.
I still go because I was teaching parts at
Right.
the academy.
Right.
You don't teach them to shoot color. You shoot the center of mass. That's what they're being taught. It doesn't matter what the silhouettes, because you got different ones.
Mhm.
Colored, dark, white, it doesn't matter. It depends on on what's going on. There are certain requirements by the state that you have to do different training.
Okay, my next question, do you feel like it will be more stop and searches because of this new gun law?
You better, well, first of all, the officer should have enough probable cause to stop you. You can't
Mhm.
just stop you because you're walking down the street.
Right.
Now, and I tell people, if I ain't doing anything, okay, stop me if you want to.
Mhm.
I have to teach young people, and I tell them this, don't get so mad because they stop you.
Mhm.
I'm going to deal with it another day.
Mhm.
And I'm going to get, if you take and do the proper thing, then you can deal with that also. Fighting him right there in front of folks or doing like that, that's not the time. I would say go get with the Office of Professional Standards,
Mhm.
get your legal advisor. If it's a civil case, then you go and get your attorney. But make sure that when you deal with it, they got to have probable cause. Just because you're walking down the street, it does not justify them saying, let me just check you, see if you got a weapon. You cannot do that. Got to have a reason.
True.
And articulate.
Right.
I think that's the problem we run into. When I read reports and stuff, when I vote the park, you got to articulate. So me and you talking,
Mhm.
but if I'm not here with you, you got to write it in a report. I need to see and make sure it matches what you told.
Gotcha.
Well, I tell you what, Mike, what you just said is so important for people out there in our listening audience to understand. Save your fight for another day. Don't try and fight the officer at that point. If you have been stopped wrongly without cause, go ahead and allow the officer to do what he feels he needs to do. But then you get the name of that officer, badge number of that officer, and go to internal affairs, file your complaint. Get your lawyer if you need to. But don't put your life at risk.
But that's why I'm with the Baptist Ministers Conference now. We're standing up in the community, but we need everybody. Why go to a church and your pastor won't be there to work with you, to fight with you?
Yeah.
Mhm.
We've got to have City Hall, the police department recognize who we are in the community. Now, I'm on both sides, but I respect everybody.
Yeah.
But I tell people all the time, we all got to do something. And if we're going to do something, let's work together. Because if a member called me and say, hey, I had this encounter, A, B, C, D, okay, let's do it this way. Then we're going to go down there. I'm going to sit there with you.
Mhm.
I want you to feel comfortable that you're not getting intimidated because you report something.
Mhm.
You should not be intimidated. We got some, I haven't seen that come yet with Chief Holloway with St. Pete.
Mhm.
If you get the word, he's going to deal with it. But we got to make sure that we have leaders who don't mind going with people. Let me bring something to your attention. Remember when Paris, the young lady got killed?
Paris Whitehead. Hamilton.
Yes. One of the persons, and I know he's out of the picture now, was always fighting for it was Savelle Brown. And I'm not bringing Savelle up but Savelle was with the family steps of the way.
Mhm.
We need leaders that's going to be with the family steps of the way, because some families ain't going to know how to deal with it. And then sometimes we can deal with folks, and sometimes we deal with people who are not able to read that good or something, and they get past by reading a lot of jungle,
Right.
and people get off. Be careful what you say. So take somebody with you that can help articulate it.
Right.
I'm going to say something because you brought it up. Yes, Savelle was with the family, but I was with that family also. As a matter of fact, I'm the one that worked with the family and called Nurse, chairman of the city council, in getting that avenue, Preston Avenue, changed to Paris Avenue.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I was going to, because
Okay.
he was here. I was just using him as example as the people who was recognized as so-called leaders.
Mhm.
We're not all looked as leaders. Some people say we are activists, community activists,
Mhm.
Right.
but we are community activists just in our neighborhood and on our street. But we needed people. And yes, you did do that. And that was something that great that we did. Carl Nurse did work with you. But the sad part about it, we had African-American, leaders who should have been involved in naming
They
the
weren't.
names.
Okay.
And they weren't.
Well, it has come to my attention that we need to wrap things up, and I want to say to Sergeant Mike Hawkins, thanks for being here with
No
us
problem.
today, talking on a very, very important subject. I want to thank my two co-hosts, as always, for doing a great job in this discussion. And I also want to thank our listening audience for tuning in to the Ray Tampa podcast on 99.1 FM, The Berg, and ask that you do so each and every Tuesday evening at 5:30 p.m. And you can go to YouTube, type in the Ray Tampa podcast and listen to them all. Lastly, sponsorships are welcome. With that being said, good evening.